Shabbat Shalom. There are so many different moments in a service like this. Moments of thinking about our world, thinking about our lives. I invite us now, though, to just think about our sacred community, and tonight to know that we are celebrating our sacred community. 4 years ago, we had a challenge at Mount Zion that our board became aware of an imbalance between our revenues and expenses and our dreams and aspirations and how we were resourcing them. And we envisioned, for the first time in our history, an endowment campaign to invite the generosity of our community, not for any specific program, not for any kind of personal value or interest, but to embody and to give toward our collective goodness, to give towards us becoming and staying a welcoming and vibrant Jewish spiritual home from generation to generation. And we succeeded through the generosity and through the spirit of so many people. And it was the outcome of so many people's efforts in the Mount Zion way. Fast forward through our success, and we wanted to celebrate that success also in our Mount Zion way. We wanted to create an art piece, not just to recognize the names of those who contributed, but to do it in a way that helped further our vision and our values. And in December 2019, in an era long, long ago, and the last time many of us were at a conference, we were part of 5,000 people, several of us here in Chicago at the Union for Reform Judaism's biennials, and it was an incredible celebration of being together. And they have an exhibit hall, and Robert Garfinkel and I and a couple others found this booth of a woman named Amy Reichert, who is an artist, and it was so clear from the very first meeting and seeing her work that she brought skill and meaning and depth and wisdom to everything she created, and we knew we had found a partner. And now tonight, she is here with us to share what she has created for us. Many of you who are here in person may have already seen down the hall the work that she created. For those who are joining us online, I'll give you a preview right now to say that after the service, if you are on Zoom, there will be a traveling computer with that Zoom, so you too can see the artwork. But if you're live streaming, you have to go to Zoom, mzion.org, click onto the Zoom link, and then you'll get there as well. We have no way to do it through live streaming. So everyone will get a chance to see it, but what will we see? I invite Amy Reichert from Chicago to share with us your vision and your words. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you for that incredible introduction. It was a great conversation for me as well. I was languishing in my booth, and suddenly these very thoughtful, enthusiastic people came up and engaged me in this conversation that resulted in tonight. So I just couldn't be more thrilled to be here. I do have to say, though, that first I'm going to divert a bit because Rabbi Spilker said, can you do a Devar Torah? And in my home shul in Chicago, that usually means diving pretty deeply into the text of that week's parsha. So I'm going, if you'll forgive me, a little digression into the very difficult parsha of Mitzorah that we're reading this week, and I'll try to draw a connection between that and tonight's celebration. So as an architect, I sometimes feel alone in my fascination with the second half of the Parshiot in the book of Exodus. From Truma to Pikudei, they're just filled with excruciating detail of the building of the Mishkan, our desert tabernacle. There are lists of pins and tenons and planks and bolts and nuts, and I always love these, and everybody is completely mystified. So last week's Parsha, Tatzriah, and this week's Mitzorah deal with pretty icky stuff, I would say. The presence of plagues that emerge on the surfaces of human bodies, of clothing, and in houses. It's really hard to know what to do with these things. I can only think that the dermatologists in the community have their exciting moment with fascination with these parshiot the way I do with the Exodus passages. But for those of us who are not in that medical specialty, it's really hard to know what we can tease out from these parshiot deal with these lesions, their diagnoses, and their cures. So, as usual, the rabbis of the Talmud and our tradition can always find some sort of moral gem hidden in what is otherwise very difficult, sort of archaic-seeming passages. The rabbis posited that the plagues affecting human bodies that we read about last week should be interpreted in a moral light, that the ethical or moral shortfalls or failings of a human being bring on this punishment of these terrible lesions on one's skin. Most famously, the skin ailment is a punishment for an outward manifestation of the evils of lashon hara, or idle gossip or slander. So those who slander are stricken with this terrible disease. So if lashon hara is the moral cause of leprosy on the skin, what is the moral cause of leprosy on stones? So to answer that question, I'd like to look a little bit at the middle of Mitzorah, starting with the fourth aliyah that deals with leprosy in houses. While that ailment might seem a little less immediately painful than the skin disease, it's still pretty disconcerting. Anyone who's had an attack of mold in their basement knows that uneasy feeling of being eaten from within or having the foundations kind of corrupted under you. I always find the English term for this, rising damp, particularly unnerving, as maybe many of you do as well. So let's look at the original text to see what it's actually saying. In Vayikra chapter 14, verse 34, it says, "When you enter the land of Canaan that I give you as a possession, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon a house in the land you possess, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, 'Something like a plague has appeared in my house.' The priest shall order the house cleared before he enters to examine the plague, so that nothing in the house may become impure. After that, the priest shall enter to examine the house." The passage continues with a description of subsequent visits, diagnoses, cures on the part of the priest, with levels of prescriptive actions ranging from closing the house, scraping the stones, full-on demolition, scattering the stones in the earth outside the city to a sort of dump or unclean place. As in the moral, psychological interpretation of skin leprosy, the commentators of our tradition have sussed out some deeper meanings and lessons in these very ancient-sounding passages that can still resonate for us today. They've done that by looking closely at the language in the section of the Parsha that I just read. "When you enter the land of Canaan that I give you as a possession, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon a house." This "I inflict" is a very active verb, which implies that God intends to purposely zap certain houses once the people are dwelling in the land. This contrasts with the more passive language of the skin disease, which begins when a person has on the skin a swelling, a rash, or a discoloration, etc. So leprosy on the skin just kind of happens, whereas it's a much more intentional act of God in a house. Maybe the more active language implies that this might be an inevitable consequence of being settled in permanent houses, something we have to watch out for. Next, the rabbis focus on the language of the following verse. "The owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, 'Something like a plague has appeared upon my house.'" The Gemara in Masechet Yoma 11b, part of the Babylonian Talmud, sees the phrase "asher lo habayit," the owner of the house, as an indication of his selfishness. The house and its contents are lo, his alone. He refuses to share with other people. Vayikra Rabbah, a midrash on the book of Leviticus, gives us a very colorful anecdote that explains this. It says, "How would this happen? When a person says to their neighbor, 'Could you lend me a kav,' roughly 6 cups, of wheat?' And they reply, 'I don't have any.' A kav of barley? I don't have any. A kav of dates? No dates. Or a woman says to her neighbor, could you lend me a strainer? And she replies, I don't have a strainer. Can you lend me a sieve? No sieve. What does the Holy One of Blessing do? The plague erupts within that house, and while the person is bringing out their possessions, the people see and say, didn't they say they didn't have anything at all? Look at how much wheat there is. Look at how much barley. Look at all those dates. A cursed house with these curses. So while the ostensible reason for dragging one's possessions out of the house and onto the front lawn is to limit the spread of this streaky green-red mold, the deeper reason, according to the commentary, is to reveal to one's neighbors how the homeowner has lied about what he or she has, to call them out on their stinginess. An additional object lesson in emptying the house is that the homeowner is made to see how much they are really blessed with, how abundant their blessings are, and that these blessings are not entirely of their own making, but they are there by the grace of God. The gifts of God combined with their efforts to give them this abundance. So what does this have to do with our current moment? Tonight here, we are celebrating the opposite of the stricken house. Mount Zion is embodying the ideal that the rabbis are urging people toward in these texts. You have created a community of generosity, a community of shared blessings in many forms, material, spiritual, expressed in good deeds and good works. This is all the more remarkable given that this campaign took place during the pandemic, a time of fear and isolation, a time when it would be our natural instinct to lock ourselves in our houses and be wary of sharing our blessings. This is what made this project such a pleasure to work on, and I hope that in some small way the piece reflects these values. The work was, of course, inspired by the campaign mantra of to make firm our steps, the idea that walking together on solid ground, advancing toward a common collective is the goal. I was also inspired by another passage from Nitzivim in Deuteronomy toward the end of the Torah. You stand this day, all of you, before the eternal your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your women, even the stranger within your camp, from woodchopper to water drawer. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us today and with those who are not here this day. This passage perfectly embodies the sort of radical inclusivity expressed during our meetings here as a driving force behind Mount Zion. It's inclusive across age, across gender, across heritage, and across socioeconomic status. It is even inclusive across time. This concept of standing together generated an overall composition of verticals of different colors and different heights coming together, which can be read both as a tight-knit community and also made up of distinctive individuals. As an architect, I couldn't help but be a little awed by working in an Eric Mendelsohn building, and so the thin verticals also echo the ribs of wood that are present in the sanctuary and throughout the building. So perhaps it echoes some of the design principles original to the building. The idea of interweaving the various giving levels and of listing small groups of people on a single rod emphasizes the interdependence of the community essential for a firm foundation. So I'd like to thank you for an opportunity to do this work and to collaborate with you, and to the wonderful partners I had in Rabbi Spilker and Jean King Applebaum and Robert Garfinkel, and also to my wonderful hosts this weekend, which include all of those people plus Bob Mast, who gave me an amazing tour of the Twin Cities this morning. So Shabbat Shalom, may you go from strength to strength, and may this campaign last for quite a while, so you don't have to go through it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that last blessing. I will say that when we first saw that design and remembered a fact that not everyone here might know, which is that this wall behind us was originally supposed to be multicolored, like Jacob's coat of many colors. And the board of directors, in their wisdom, voted against Mendelssohn's vision, and it became this canvas that we have before us. But now we have this multicolored, vibrant community in the hallway where we live and pass by. And I think that's a beautiful symbol, and if you haven't yet seen it, you'll look forward to seeing it. It is gorgeous. I want to say, too, that in the Parshat Metzora that you were quoting from, there are two kinds of people. The kinds of people who can say, there's something like this, because they don't have the expertise to know. And then the priests who use this verb form called the declarative PL and are able to declare that something is what it is. And when you are doing a campaign like this, an art project like this, you need the people who have the skills who know how to declare. So I am so pleased that Mount Zion has those leaders. David Crystal and Jean King Applebaum were the co-chairs of this campaign. And I'd like to invite both of you up here to share just a couple words with us to celebrate the success of this moment and thank everyone.
How wonderful to be here to see people. I haven't done it in so long. I also have high heels on. I haven't done that for several years. So, as many of you know, I am married to a development professional, and so this campaign, the success of this campaign is particularly special because from a development perspective, it is very difficult to raise unrestricted endowment funds because people love to put their names on things, and there's no name. You know, this, as Rabbi said, we're giving to this endowment fund. Second reason it's hard is that from living donors, we were asking people for money now. Fine, we had those two development challenges. Then we added in, the pandemic. Thank you. So another challenge. And so to have succeeded, to have success in a very short period of time from a development perspective is truly incredible. And Rabbi mentioned, but we had wonderful committees. And I'd like to ask people, if you were on the COG, which is the Campaign Organizing Group, COG, get it? COG. Or CAC, which was the Campaign Activation Committee, which was a slightly larger group, but these were the people who went out and did solicitations selflessly. I mean, truly amazing. So if you were a COG or a CAC or in any other way helped with the campaign, please stand so that we can acknowledge you. Thank you. We do our temple applause. Truly appreciate your help, and we succeeded. All right, David.
Thank you. I just want to build on two expressions this evening. In the rabbi's opening remarks, he made the comment or the characterization of lines of connection or line of connection. And among Amy's comments was this notion of radical inclusivity. And I think among the things that we're so very proud of and so grateful for is how this quote-unquote fundraising process enabled us to make informed new connections, meet more in our community that we're not just sort of momentous in that moment of time, but will sustain for generations, literally. And I remember years ago when I began some development work here at Mount Zion, Marianne spent some time sharing a bit about tzedakah and its sort of higher purpose. And I'm so grateful, and I think we're also grateful for those of us that committed and helped to really drive the success that we were able to form these connections and build this community in a way, help to I guess, build and sustain this community in really impassioned, inspired ways. And the artwork really is a wonderful reflection of these values and this notion that, in particular, this truly radical and unusual, if not very unique, value that we have, that every one of us makes a difference in our own ways, whether it's financial or in other ways that we participate here. And I am just so very proud to be a part of it. And the gratitude that, I have so much gratitude for Jean and for all of us that participated in our own ways. And I do, even though he doesn't like this, but I think it's really important to appreciate the rabbi who, absent his leadership in all things we do, and in particular relative to this effort, would not have been successful. And I think we learned, I personally have learned so much from him through this process, and to watch him evolve and change, and embrace this in such an extraordinary way and make it happen for all of us. So with that in mind, just much appreciation, much celebration, and much gratitude. Thank you.
I'll let you take your seats because I want to honor both of you along with everyone who had the opportunity to contribute toward this effort and did so. And so this is a blessing for all of us who did. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo, tikchu et trumati." From every person who is moved by generosity of the heart, accept gifts for me. We celebrate the legacy of Yidvenu Libo, those moved by generosity and free will to build and establish our very first holy communal structure, the Mishkan. They gave of gold and silver and copper, purple and crimson yarns, fine wools and items near and far. Today we honor all who contributed with generosity of heart to our very first endowment campaign and made firm our steps. We call you Nidavim, those who are generous. We know you as Nidavim, those who are kind. We look to you as Nidavim, those who volunteer. We respect you as Nidvei Amom, those who are leaders among our people. And we offer thanks to you who sustain us, just as you give thanks to God, declaring, as it says in Psalms, "With a generous heart I made an offering to you, O God. I give thanks in your name. Baruch ata Adonai noten tormim nidivim." Blessed is God, the giver of generous givers. Amen. And this moment calls for a Shehechianu. Cantor Strauss-Klein, will you join me on the bima? In an unrehearsed, unscripted moment, lead us in this beautiful blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu